My name is Charli Arman. I'm the Exceptional Children's Preschool Coordinator with Brunswick County Schools. I have been working with children ages birth through 5 for probably about 12 years. I worked as an infant toddler family service coordinator, and then I helped direct 3 child development centers. And those child development centers were for children who had special needs as well as children who were typically developing. Before I became a teacher of the visually impaired, I worked with children birth through 5 in a classroom, an inclusive classroom setting, and then itinerantly in their homes. And then I came here to continue working with children who have special needs, focusing here on ages 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. So in addition to my work experience, my education is a master's of special education. And then I'm a national board certified teacher for the early years. And most importantly is I have 3 little girls. I have a 2-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-year-old. And I think I get most of my learned experience with them. So we're here today to just talk about the developmental milestones. We're going to start all the way at birth and go up through age 8. But I have them grouped together. So talk about birth through 2, and then talk about 3 to 5-year-olds, and then about 6 or kindergarten age through 8-year-olds. Before we start, I wanted to just find out what your ideas were on child development. So what I'm going to do is throw out a year or an age, and then we can just talk about what some of those milestones might look like. So the first year that we're going to talk about is age 1. What are some things that you would anticipate a 1-year-old, if you thought of a 1-year-old in your head, a 1-year-old would be able to do? Crawl. Good. Starting to walk. Good. Yeah, starting to make some noises, talking. So by age of 1, we're thinking that they're going to start making some sounds that, consonant vowel sounds of ba-bas and da-das, mamas, peekaboo. That's a great social game that 1-year-olds are going to love to play. No matter how many times you put your hands behind your eyes behind your hands, they're always excited when you come right back up. They're going to be cruising. So some children may be walking, some children may not be walking yet. They may still be crawling or holding onto furniture and using the furniture to help them balance. And you'll see them kind of go in between, 2 pieces of furniture. You're going to want to look at their fine motor skills, so that's their small muscles, what they're going to use with their hands. They're going to be able to pick up Cheerios, off their tray and feed themselves. Container plays are great, especially if you have lots of Tupperware. You're going to see them take all the Tupperware out of the cabinets, put all the Tupperware back in the cabinets, open the Tupperware containers, put things in the Tupperware, dump them out of the Tupperware. They're going to try to help you with dressing themselves. They're going to try to help push their arms through their armholes. They're going to, try to help, pick up their feet and put them in their pants. You might see them loving a special toy, a stuffed animal, a baby doll. They'll hug the baby doll or kiss the baby doll. And they'll be able to do a turn-taking game with you. They'll be able to roll a ball or back and forth with you, maybe be able to push a car back and forth between the 2 of you. At this age, they're just beginning to come out of themselves and try to explore the world separate from you as their mommy, and then, and separate from themselves. So what do you think the next step of development would be about 18 months? Because there's so much that happens in such a quick amount of time. So between 12 months and 18 months, what might change? Yeah, they're going to start using utensils. Do you think they're going to have some spills with that? Do you think they might still be spilling some? Yeah, yeah, probably still spilling some. Yeah, by 18 months of age, they're going to be able to, start using a spoon. They might still have some spillage, but they're going to be able to start doing that. They're going to start trying to communicate with you, again, moving out away from mommy and away from themselves to get something else. So pointing to what they want. They're going to be able to start putting maybe 1 to 2 words together. So they might say cup, or they might say juice, or they might say, mommy cup, to say, mommy, you get my cup for me. Their motor skills, so their muscles, they're going to be using those more. Now they're probably starting to walk. Usually between 12 months and 18 months, children are walking. If there's any type of, Hearing impairment or visual impairment is not uncommon for children not to walk until they're 24 months old. But you're gonna, see them beginning to get some interest in crayons. They have those really big, thick crayons. You'll see them hold their fist on the crayon and start to make marks on paper and be interested in that. They're using sippy cups pretty regularly by this point, and they're gonna start, if you give them a cup, they'll be able to start drinking with some spillage out the corners of their mouth, or like if I'm sure you give them a water bottle, they put the whole water bottle in their mouth, and they can do that. They just need a little practice. And they're starting to come to you to ask for help. So if they can't do it on their own, they're starting to come to you to ask for that. So the next step would be 24 months. So by age 2, what do you think that we would be looking at? By 2, yep, they're gonna start using about 2 words together. They're also gonna be able to walk pretty evenly, walk pretty well on uneven surfaces. And they're gonna be able to bend down and pick up small toys on their own without falling over. You'll see them try to start jumping, and they may not get both feet off the ground, but they're trying, they've got the motion. Again, they're still helping with dressing, but this time they wanna do it. I do it is, they're beginning to say me or I, instead of calling themselves by their name. So instead of maybe saying, Molly, do it, they might say, I do it. My turn, I do it. They're starting to turn light switches on and off. They're starting to be able to turn doorknobs to get in and out of things. They're climbing. They're being able to push that chair up to the counter, climb on the counter, get in the cupboard, things you don't want them to get. And they're also being able to understand a lot more than they can get out, which is gonna lead to a lot of the tantrums where they call them the terrible twos. Because they understand a lot, but they don't necessarily have the language to be able to express what they want. So they get very frustrated. And so you'll see a lot of those tantrums. So what happens if you're noticing that your child may not be meeting some of the milestones? What do we do? The first step is to always talk to your pediatrician. They're kind of like the hub of anything that's related to your child and their development. That being said, a pediatrician typically in the younger years sees children pretty regularly. They'll see them every 6 months at least for their well checks and their shots and things like that. As children get older, they see them further apart, maybe once every year. So if you have concerns about your child's development and you don't feel like you're being heard by the pediatrician, it's always great to bring in some documentation, videos, notes, anything like that to go ahead and give the pediatrician more information. They do get a snapshot with them, so we want to make sure that we give them as much information as we can. Easter Seals has a website up, and they sponsor what's called Ages and Stages questionnaires. They're questionnaires that are completed by parents. A lot of pediatricians' offices use them. So they're completed by parents, and they can just give you a global range in all areas of development, how well your child is doing, if they're meeting their milestones. So the website's there. You can go to the website, fill out or complete this developmental questionnaire. It starts at age, I think, 3 months and goes all the way up to 60 months. And then Easter Seals will score it and send you the results in the mail. And it is completely free. If you continue to have further concerns, there's an agency. It's called the Children's Developmental Services Agency. It's here housed in Wilmington. Jim Northrup is the director of that program for this area of the state. They provide free developmental screenings and evaluations on children ages birth to 3 who do have a developmental concern. And if they do find that the child has more than a 25% delay in one area of development or more than a 20% delay in 2 areas of development, they will help the family find resources to assist them with those developmental needs. And they'll assign a service coordinator to help the family, bring in all those extra providers into their homes. So, next step is the 3-year-olds. Now, development happens really, really quick between birth to 3. Between 3 and 5, it's still fairly quick when you look at the grand scheme of a lifespan, but it's a lot slower than what happens between birth to 3. So what would we expect from a 3-year-old? They're talking, yeah, they're talking in sentences, right? They're saying they're being able to put 3 and 4 words together. They're being able to comment, to tell you about themselves. They're being able to ask some simple questions. They can tell you their first name, their last name. Most of them are able to kick a ball, throw a ball. Some are starting to catch balls. They're able to point to simple body parts. Where are your eyes? Where are your nose, your mouth? And then even some of the more complex body parts. Where's your elbow? Or your eyebrow? They're being able to imitate drawing circles. Now we're starting to look at some of the pre-writing strokes, so not just vertical and horizontal lines, but circles. And I know you probably wouldn't normally give a 3-year-old scissors, but it's a great skill for them to start working on. They're able to snip paper. They may not necessarily have the appropriate grasp. They might turn their scissors upside down, but they are able to open and shut their hands so that they can snip that paper. And their memories are coming along. So we would be able to, if you were to give them a series of numbers and say, okay, say 7 and 3 and 4, they should be able to repeat that back to you, 7, 3, and 4. They're starting to sequence events. And they're learning themselves as boys and girls, and the boys and girls are different. How about a 4-year-old? 48 months. And say, as we had talked about a little bit earlier, that the growth in the early years is really, really big, and then as they get older, it decreases little by little. At 4 years of age, we're starting to notice some differences in their language, right? They're starting to not only use 3 and 4 sentences, but they're starting to understand a little bit of the innuendos like past tense and present tense and future tense. They're adding INGs and S's and plurals, EDs to the end of their words. They're being able to understand categories and functions. Like, what do you do when you're hungry? Well, you eat. Where does milk come from? It comes from cows. Where does the giraffe live? Usually they say the zoo. I think they're being able to complete puzzles, 5, 6, 7-piece puzzles. They're using playground equipment. They're being able to climb up the playground equipment on the stairs and then go down the slides. They're able to swing and pump their legs. And a lot of them are starting to do being able to hang on bars, like the monkey bars. But they're able to do that safely, so you won't have to monitor them and supervise them and assist them with not taking those risks of jumping from the top of the playground down. They're starting to know size concepts, smallest, biggest, small versus big, and then they can even sequence the sizes. Colors are starting to come along now where they can match colors and then label colors. This is the age that pretend is starting to happen, where you can see them imitating roles. You can see them playing housekeeping and beginning to cook like mom or to fix cars like dad. They usually know their age. They usually know how old they are in the city that they live in by the time they're 4. And they can begin to learn their phone number because, like we talked earlier, at about 3, they're starting to be able to learn sequences and have memories for that. So they can learn a phone number. And now we're starting to dress and undress and use fasteners. So their fine motor or their little muscles are developing enough that they're able to zip, button, snap. Some of the jeans are still kind of hard to work those snaps and buttons at age 4, but for a majority of things, they can do those on their own. So by age 5, so this is a year, we're thinking like a year before kindergarten, what would that look like? Maybe they're able to start reading. They definitely have the memory aspect of it coming along. And we're gonna see a lot more pre-writing strokes. So they're getting ready in preparation to start learning how to write their name. So they're gonna be able to just copy like a square or a cross. We're gonna be able to follow 3-step directions. So you should be able to say, okay, Molly, you need to go to the door, find your shoes, put them on, and then come back and see me. So that, lots of simple, directions. They're gonna start using comparative words. So not only are they able to understand bigger and smaller or heavier or stronger, but they're actually using it in their speech when they give descriptives and they comment on what's happening. They're starting to, catch a ball using 2 hands, where they've been able to kick a ball forever and they've been able to throw a ball for almost 2 years, and now they're starting to able to use those visual motor skills to be able to put their hands together and catch it as it's coming close to them. Their balance is getting much better. They're able to balance on one foot. You see a lot of children beginning gymnastics at this age so they can do the balance beam. They're starting to copy letters. Again, getting ready to write their names and starting to be able to attend for longer periods of time, take turns with other children, and they're usually completely toilet trained by the time they're 5. And that includes being able to wipe themselves and wash and dry their hands to complete the whole toileting routine. So if you notice that a child may not be meeting these milestones by the time that they're 5, what do? Again, talk to your pediatrician. They're the ones who have the ages and stages questionnaire usually at their office, and that they can go ahead and provide that developmental screening initially, or again, you can do the free developmental screening online through Easter Seals. If you have further concerns, you can contact me here at Brunswick County Schools. We provide developmental screenings and evaluations to children whose families have developmental concerns for them. Again, it's free of charge, and if needed, if there is a developmental delay that we can help with, we work with the families to create a plan to help them in their education. So now this is an area that I'm just getting in with my own children, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. And so as a 6-year-old going into kindergarten, what would we anticipate would now be developmentally appropriate for them? Alphabet, colors, numbers, letters, sharing, taking turns following routines. Well, that's absolutely right. So by age 6, this is what we're expecting. I am a big proponent of developmentally appropriate, teaching and learning. And I can remember the frustration that I had as a mom trying to work with my 3- and 4-year-old on, why are you not learning your colors? Why can you not write your name? I've been working on this forever. And it's just because she wasn't developmentally ready to learn those things yet. It's like if I would have taken my 1-year-old and said, okay, now it's time for you to go and play on the slide all by yourself. It's not ready to do that yet. So, but now, by the time they go to kindergarten, age 6, they are ready to learn all those things. So they've gained a lot of muscle strength, a lot of coordination. They are working those monkey bars. They're pumping their legs on the swing. They're able to play kickball and dodgeball. They're starting to understand cause and effect relationships. They're understanding that, the fairy doesn't magically come and drop clean clothes off in their drawer anymore, that it's actually mom doing the laundry, and that's how they get their clean clothes. That kind of magical thinking of preschool is going away. They are able to kind of problem solve. They're able to focus on an issue and then problem solve how's the best way to deal with this. So verbal modeling works great for your 6-year-old. So you can say, I see that you are so frustrated because you cannot tie your shoe. Well, what are some things that we can do to help you tie your shoe, to focus on that one problem and then to problem solve strategies from that? They're starting to be able to understand combinations of letters and sounds of letters and how they all go together. This is your reading. They're being able to understand and memorize combinations of letters for sight words. So this is exactly what happens in kindergarten. And they are becoming more social with friends. They're performing peer relationships, moving away from their parents, away from their family unit. And when they go to school in kindergarten, that's typically what happens. There's a whole new world of friends are opened up to them. So as we go further into 1st grade, with your 7-year-old, so now we know our letters, we know our numbers, we know our colors. We're able to make friends, we're taking turns and following routines, and now it's time for 1st grade. What do you think we're learning in 1st grade? In 1st grade, we're starting to learn concepts of time. Because I don't know how many times my 5-year-old will ask me on the way to go somewhere, how many more minutes? When are we gonna be there yet? Well, you just asked, sweetheart, so it's still gonna be 2 hours. Now how many minutes? an hour and 59 minutes, you know. But my 8-year-old, how long until we get there? Well, honey, it's gonna be about 2 hours. And then she says, okay. But she understands that concept of time. She understands how long a year is, and that years are broken up into, you know, seasons, and that each season happens once a year. You're starting to see their preference for a learning style. You're starting to see that some kids really, really love learning through hands-on. They are science fanatics, you know, they like mixing things. And you're also starting to see other children who really like learning through reading, or can really learn through, you know, music. And so they're beginning to, you know, be able to work more independently. Simple math problems using objects are solvable, and then like word problems. Being able to say if Billy had 5 and Sarah had 2, how many do they have altogether? They're starting to learn empathy, you know, understanding that other people have the same types of feelings that they do, and they're sensitive to others' needs. Some of their fears of, you know, spiders or the dark, or, you know, are kind of diminishing now. They can still have fears, but it's not quite as intense as it used to be. A lot of the acute language or articulation development is starting to subside now, when they would say, you know, use the F instead of the TH sound, like I'm gonna throw it to you, or I'm trying to think of another one. We're gonna go through the woods. Now they're saying, I'm going to throw it to you. We're gonna go through the woods. They're becoming better readers. They're starting to use phonics, sounding words out. Not only is it now memories, but they're actually starting to sound out words. And then we have still some difficulty with basic spelling, but our language is very, very complex with, you know, magic E and how these 2 letters make those 2 sounds, and it's all very similar. So still some basic spelling needs, and they're able to draw. They're able to draw big scenes. They can draw a person with 12 body parts. They can draw a house with windows and shutters and doors and bushes, and put it all together to make this real complex scene. And then the last one we're going to talk about is what happens in 2nd grade. And I'm right in the thick of this. So in 2nd grade, now our fingers are very, very controlled. We have individual dexterity with our finger movement. Typing, tablets, very big, beginning in 2nd grade. They're also able to do the same type of play, but they're able to do it longer. So here you're seeing soccer games lasting, you know, 20, 30 minutes a half. You're seeing children beginning to do swim team. Their motor abilities and their endurance is much more, and they enjoy it much more. You're able to converse with them. They do a back and forth conversation with you. And it's almost to an adult level. They might not use all the words appropriately, but they've heard the words and they know how they're supposed to say them. A lot of children in 2nd grade do enjoy reading, because at this point they're reading for pleasure, and they're choosing the reading that they want to do. They know that things happen for a reason, and they're curious about that. So they want to know why things work. How does that work? Why did the volcano erupt? Well, how did the lava come up through the volcano? They want to know about all those little details. They do still need a lot of love and understanding, and they need empathy. They still are pretty dramatic about most things, so especially from their mom, they need that constant support. And they can have the wide range of emotions. They can be cheerful and pleasant and helpful, and they can also be bossy and selfish, just like any of us. But usually their emotions at age 8 kind of go up and down a little bit like a roller coaster. They can still be pretty dramatic. And so what do we do if you're concerned at the school age level that maybe your child's not meeting their milestones? Again, we always recommend that you speak with your pediatrician, but at this point, usually children are seen at their pediatrician for their well check once a year. So once a year for 10 or 15 minutes may not be enough time or information for your pediatrician to make the best judgment for your child's development. So make sure if you have concerns that you come in and you bring documentation or video to your pediatrician so that he has all the information he needs to direct you in the right to point you in the right direction. I have another developmental checklist listed here. It's just online. You can go in and you just click, 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 and it then tells you about approximately what age of development your children are at for 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. If you have concerns about your child in the classroom, it's always best to talk with your child's teacher first. And usually if there's concerns in the classroom, the child's teacher has already spoken to you about that. And then if needed, they usually move into providing some strategies and supports to the child in the classroom as far as like a student support team. So what they need to help them try to be successful, and that's the first step.